Well, welcome everyone to the journey to CFP. And this is the podcast where we get to explore the real stories, the challenges, and the victories behind becoming a certified financial planner. Now, I am so excited because my guest today on this episode is Chris Akers, and Chris is a director at Envisnet. Did I say that right?
Yeah, InvestNet, yeah.
Based in Raleigh. And what is so unique about Chris is he might look familiar. He is the first person to be on this podcast a second time, meaning he was interviewed the first time while studying, which I don't know if you were terrified to get on this podcast at that point, but you have now passed, and I cannot wait for everybody to hear your story and insights along this journey. So welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. It's been a long time coming, and you guys have been so supportive throughout the whole process. And yeah, that first call was good. It definitely just reminded me again what I'm working towards, and yeah, I'm excited to be on this side of it now. It's a great feeling.
So you're how many days out? Like two, three? Wait, what's
I
today?
passed on Tuesday. Today's Friday, so yeah, about 3 days out,
Are you still
and
floating?
every day has gotten better. It's hard to describe. I know you know it. It's like I feel like the first day after I passed, I was just waiting for an email to come into my inbox that said, "Oh, you didn't actually pass." And then now it's like I'm starting to actually realize, it's over and I did it, and we never have to take that again.
Yes. Okay. So I know we shared a little bit about your story leading
Mhm.
up to connecting with Breakthrough, working with
Mhm.
Paul, working with the team. But how did you, let's start with, if I remember correctly, and I don't know if we said this on the last one, um, you've gone through different programs, and was Zon your last program?
Zon was actually the only program too.
The
So
only
that was the
program.
last program and the only, yeah.
And do I recall the possibility that somebody told you maybe not to get a tutor? Or am I just hallucinating? I'm starting up.
Yeah.
We're hitting it hard. Let's go.
Yeah. And it's a good starting place because I'll say, and I say this to anybody who's going through it, like you really have to know yourself through this process. And Paul was reminding me of that like every day. I mean, in regards to that specifically, I did Zon the first time and the second time.
Yep.
And no disrespect to Zon by any means. I think the books were great for me from a technical standpoint. To give like just a second of background, like I work in consulting through like M&A and succession planning with RAs. And so I know the business from the industry side really well, but I don't do planning. So for me, it was like I needed to have more technical understanding, but I think just in my background, I've always been a quick learner. And when you follow the process that Zon lays out, or any of the review programs lay out, they give it to you very specifically. Say like you're going to read this on this day, you're going to take the quiz, you're going to read the quiz, and then tomorrow you're going to do the same thing. So like I kind of did that the first time, and it obviously didn't go my way. And then I called and I was like, I feel like I know this stuff, but it's just not, I'm not, when I see the questions, it's just not really working. And I was like, I think I could probably do with some tutoring. And I was specifically told, we don't think you need tutoring at all. I just think you need to go back through it again. Second time's kind of the charm. And foolish me listened. Because there's a part of you too that, and this is just so funny. It's like you have almost a badge of honor by saying, "Oh, I just did it all on my own, didn't really use anybody and pass." And it's like looking back on it, I think that was the humility side of things that I'm proud I've gotten over from a personal standpoint. But yeah, so that was kind of the conversation with them. And one of the reasons when I called Paul the first time, I was in the live review in Charlotte for the second attempt. And I got through the first day and I was sitting there in that room and I left it midway through. And I can't remember if I got Paul through Madison's YouTube video
Yep.
or
That's how
if
I
it
learned.
was, I think that's how I got it. So I searched him on LinkedIn. I shot him a message. He got back to me in 20 minutes. And I left, I called him and he asked me the notorious, what do you do with a zero coupon bond question? And I realized right there that, I knew I needed some tutoring. I knew I needed to see the stuff differently. It wasn't a technical knowledge standpoint. It was like that depth of understanding that I wasn't getting from the review program alone.
Wow. I it's wild because I think the humility piece of you don't want to share that you failed like until you've
Yeah,
gone through this process. You're like nobody needs to know, and God forbid they know I have a tutor, and then if I get a tutor then clearly I didn't do it on my own. But who the hell cares? You just have to
I know.
pass the exam. And I feel like the tutor route, at least with Paul, it's like you go deep, and so you not only does it, I mean, you have a team behind you, but you understand the material, not just trying to memorize it to get through the exam. It is like you are a better CFP because you have learned it. You're like immersed in it. You understand it from every point of view. You learn the test taking skills. So I'm I love that you shared that and that you stepped out and you called him like, now what? So good for you. Third time's a charm. We're in the same club. Good job.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
how did you rebuild your study plan? Because it sounds like you were similar to me, and like I did Danko, and there's no perfect program. I think that's the other piece too. There is no perfect program. And we want that. Tell me what to do. I'll do it, and then let me pass. And it doesn't always
Yep.
work that way. So I did the same thing of with Danko. I reread all the books again and did more questions, and more equals I'm going to do better. That did not work. So how on the third lucky try did you rebuild this?
So this is where I think Paul and I not only became closer as like a tutor student, we became closer as friends because I think Paul just kind of got me when we first, I mean, I was a college athlete and he could tell the level of intensity that I come with this. And I'm, this may sound like I'm not used to kind of putting in the amount of hours and not only just not getting the result, but not even getting close. And he could sense that. And for me, I think I'm just a guy where like, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, but like I'd rather fail 5 times than quit. And I think for me, we started at base layer. It was
Yep.
like Paul, and it's funny because the one thing I'll say that was interesting through this process was even going through it a different way, which I'll get into here really shortly. Your mind's always thinking and uncomfortable about the fact that you're doing it so differently. And so you're like constantly questioning whether you're doing it the right way, which is a good thing. But the point I bring up with that is for me, Paul always told me you have a really good technical knowledge standpoint. And I almost didn't believe him because it's like I don't do planning at this point in my career. And so it's like I think trusting him with that made us closer. And then from there, I said, all right, so on the golf course, because I play golf, you have to kind of figure out what you're doing wrong, or maybe what you are doing that's not giving you the results you want, and then focus on what you can control. And so it started for me, kind of putting the books away because I knew and I trusted Paul and I said, I think I do know this stuff pretty well. And for me, it was like, all right, what am I not doing? And so one thing that we decided on was, getting accountability and a solid structured plan rather than just following a guideline. And so for me, it started with, all right, I'm going to get notebooks. I have like 10 of them back in the closet. And I would just simply say, all right, what are 3 tasks that I'm going to do today? So it
Mm-hmm.
would be as simple in the beginning. It was like, I'm going to wake up I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. That's task one. Two, I'm going to do a 10-question quiz with all subject areas. Three, I am going to review each question, why I got it right or wrong, and if it was a knowledge gap or if it was a misread. And that's all I did for like a month. And it graduated from there into 5 to 6 tasks that were like pretty well defined. And so what I found through that was it came just like in golf. It's like you're either not doing the right things that you can control or you are, because once you're doing those things that you can control and you're focused on that, it comes down to are you picking the right things? And that's easy. And that's where the whole thing changed for me. Was like I got to a point where my process was so strong that it was like the only way I'm not doing this right is if I'm just kind of saying, all right, I'm just going to look at 5 pages of options today, You have to be really honest with yourself about what you need to review, and you have to hold yourself accountable. I mean, the amount of days I'd wake up and just be like, oh, I don't want to do this, and that's where the real hard work happens is it's not rocket science. It's just having a good process and being disciplined, you know?
It's the commitment. And I think, coming from the as a college athlete, like you're used to that, but was it hard to put down the textbooks?
Yeah, so hard. Because like and it's funny, like, and it's fun. I'm glad we're doing this because I know I called you like weeks before I took the exam.
Yep.
And I joked with Paul after this. So a little bit more background. The second time I took the exam, I got with Paul, I guess 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks before I took
Yep.
the exam. And I thought I was struggling with estate planning. And so we did a bunch of estate planning questions. And I was kind of worried because like I didn't even read the book the second time through on estate planning. That was the
Right.
only subject I didn't get to. And that's why I said I was going to struggle in it. And we did 2 weeks of estate planning questions. And my strongest pass in the subject areas for the second time was estate planning. And that was like the green light moment for me where it was like, okay, wow, it's like I didn't even look at estate planning in the textbook. I didn't even read it. And that was my strongest subject area. Were the ones that I read the most and the ones that I was like, I did the worst.
And it's trusting the process. I mean, and it's so, when you're, especially for retest takers, which I feel like a lot of people are there listening to this, you're going, like multiple hours a day, going through the
Yeah.
textbooks, doing the problems. And then if you go through the whole program, with Breakthrough and you work in each subject area, you're diving into each one. So it's like, okay, we started, but what do I do the rest of the time? And I don't know how many months you worked with Paul, but I had taken a year off after my second one because I was not in a good place. But it was a 7-month process. And so it's like the first month, you're going to be doing like 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's it. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do in those 2 hours? And it's picking those 3 to 4, 5 things, and that's it. Some days it may take you, some days it's an hour, but it's building that muscle so you don't burn out. And I know we talked strategy of different things you can do besides using the actual text, like the Danko, the Zahn, Kaplan books, but it is different for every person. So there's no like, you should do it exactly like this. So I love that you had the experience of taking that second attempt after only 2 weeks with the state, because it must have been like, okay,
Oh, it
I trust
was
you now.
when I saw, because I always would, and I would all, and we'll have a funny joke about this. I know you and I will, but I always look at the results in the car, after I failed. Like I would just wait for the email and see. And when I saw a state was like almost all the way to the right, I was almost like not even frustrated because I was like, obviously I did one thing right in this time. And to your point, I think that was the green light moment. That was like the moment where I really understood what I needed.
And I think it's also important, like somebody that's a first time test taker, people should have the books. Like you had gotten the knowledge to go through it the right way. It's just reading it 2, 3, 4 times doesn't make a difference. Like you need the base knowledge. And I think that's helpful, at least in my opinion. But then if you didn't pass, then doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity and expecting the same results. So it's like, okay, something has to change. So yes.
And I'll say this because I think this is important to say too. And I thought about this a lot leading up is with Zahn, and I think this is every review program. And I get why they lead with this. I think that obviously, if you ask them, should I be doing a bunch of questions? They're going to tell you to make sure you're reading the book and they're going to make sure to tell you you're going through the process. They just can't simply sit with every student at the level Paul can, or you can, or Jimmy can, and say, this is what you need. And so I get it. The other thing I'll say is Zahn was I think their strategy is also a little bit of test taking.
Yep.
But I think review programs also tend to get a little bit in the weeds by design, where with Paul, it really was like the very macro level base concepts of that lead to a deeper understanding of this stuff.
Correct. You have to start up here.
Yeah.
If you don't start up here,
it was not like knowing every sentence about a 131 exchange or 1031. It's like you have to know the basics and the fundamentals, and those guide you through the exam.
Correct. And then eliminating and the test taking and how to do that. I think the question part, a lot of the programs only give you so many questions because you don't have the time if you're doing like a 4-month process to do all of it. I think for me, the biggest thing besides, well, there were so many, but going through it, answering questions, why they're right, why they're wrong. But that 100 questions a day,
Mhm.
that last month, I thought Paul was nuts when he told me I was going to do that in the beginning. I'm like, there's no chance. First of all, I don't have the questions. Second of all, that'll take up my whole life. Third of all, no. When I did that, it was the best thing I possibly could have done because it's the exam is less than 2 days of Paul questions. So it's like
You
you're
have to do
building
it.
that stamina and you don't have time to overthink it. So what
You
was your
have to do it.
experience with
So I was similar to you where I was like, it was more because like, again, I'm a person, like if you tell me what to do, I'm going to do it. But when he said 100 questions a day, just thinking through that fundamentally, I was like, how can I possibly do 100 questions a day? And I just remember I ran through his entire Q bank probably 2 times before we even got to that. So I bought Kaplan's Q bank,
that? Yep,
which was
I
a
did the same thing.
great
Yep,
decision.
yep.
And the reason I did that wasn't to say like I need to kind of score a certain way, although the mind works that way for sure. But it was like the ability to pick and choose subject areas and also just like see questions for the first time seeing them,
Yes.
pairing that with Paul's questions was the game. And you realize quickly after working with Paul for a period of time up to those 100 questions, you know a difference when you start those 100 questions. Like the first week was definitely pretty hard, but it got to a point where it was like I wasn't really fatigued or thinking about doing 100 questions. It became a part of the day. And it was like walking to the exam was another Tuesday. It didn't feel different.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
that's the thing. I think that first week you're going through them slower. And I was like, I'm never gonna get through these if I spend 5 minutes questioning one of them. It's like, you gotta go. You gotta like
Mhm.
start, you don't second guess. Whether you're right or wrong, you're confident in what you pick. And that was absolutely a game changer. It was just another
Yeah.
day. Just another day. Talking about just another day, what did you do the 2 days or 24 hours, 48 hours before that is different than 1 and 2?
So one, I think I studied until like 10 p.m. the night before. And I think I
Wait, this
got
time you
into
did?
no. The
Oh,
first
sorry,
time.
sorry, sorry. Whew. Okay.
Yeah, first time I think I studied until like 10 p.m. the night before. And I was, without knowing it, I had no shot. The second time, like I had been with Paul for 2 or 3 weeks. I think he walked me through kind of what he would suggest. And I think I still cheated his thing a little bit where I was like, I brought some of the notes with
In
me
the
in my
car.
car. Yeah, yeah. So I did that. And like, I remember, and this is, again, I think I have a really good insight into thinking through this exam a different way because that second time I took it, I knew the stuff really well.
Yep.
And I remember going through the first part of the exam and I just got like a haymaker right out the gate and it just threw me off. And I really struggled through the rest of the exam. In the second, in the lunch period, I think I ate like 2 bites of my lunch and then just sat there and like Googled answers to questions that I saw. And I was like, oh my gosh, I missed this. I missed this. Oh, I got this one right. And once we get a little bit deeper, I'll talk about this experience and how different this was because the third time, Paul was like, I want you to take, you're taking out Tuesday, Sunday's your off day, which is another massive piece for me. And you're going to take Sunday and Monday off. And you're going to schedule, just like you've been doing every day, you're going to schedule what you're doing on those days off. These are some examples of things to do, but you know yourself, like just what you want to do. So I did, like a cold plunge sauna. I went and
Yep.
saw a movie. I would go, Haley, my fiance is a nurse, and so she was working both days. And so I would go have lunch on my own. I was in the apartment for the only times I was in the apartment was when she got home and going to bed. I was out of the apartment doing things, playing golf, trying to take my mind
Yeah.
just out of it and completely away from it. And that's when we talk about like trusting the process. That was
Mm-hmm.
probably one of the moments. But there were some signs that I started to see because I think it's important to picture how success is going to feel before you get there. And I just felt calm. Like I have a whoop and my sleep scores were better than they've ever been on those 2 days before the exam this time. Even though you're always going to be nervous and you're always going to wonder how things are going to go, but like every sign that I wanted to look at was showing me you're in a really good spot
That's it.
those 2 days before the exam.
I think that calm is a feeling that I Never felt the first, like I was having panic
Yeah.
attacks before the first two. I was like, my life, like just the fact that I went in and actually took them in that mindset, no wonder I didn't pass. But it was that 2 days of just, you're like, oh, my life is going to be like this afterwards. And I remember, so 3 days out, so the exam, like let's say Saturday, if in your
Mhm.
case, I was like, I'm gonna just gonna flip through and look at everything really quick. And then I looked at it, I'm like, there's so much information. Nothing I
Yeah.
do right now is going to make a difference.
Mhm.
Close. Because you've done, if you've done the work, if you've done everything in your power, then at that point it's like, how do I calm the body down? Because at
Mhm.
that point it is all mental. It's all mental.
And that's why I say when I talk with Paul, it's like I think that calmness and that confidence is earned. It's not rocket science. It's like, and not to say again, like don't mix up calmness and nerves because you're gonna have nerves. There's no
Right.
way around that.
Yeah.
But if you're, if like when I woke up that day for the exam, again, I got a great night's sleep
Yeah.
and I was just kind of like, I
Arrogant.
remember it's funny, I wrote this down right before I walked in the exam, like that I was proud of myself for different reasons than passing an exam today. It was like, I know I did this differently. I know I took myself accountable. I made a change. I held myself disciplined to it. And at the end of the day, like, it's funny, my dad is a CFP and he started his own RA. And I did a scheduled call with him the week before just to kind of show him our progression. And he was like, this is a different, a different guy. And I just remember thinking, like, if it doesn't click today and I don't pass, I accept it because I know I've put everything I have into this. And that's where
That is
calmness comes
that
from.
that
Yeah.
is I have goosebumps again. I literally wrote a letter to myself
Yeah.
before I went in. And that was the thing. It's like you have done absolutely everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you can get to the point where you're like, whether I pass or fail, I've done everything.
Yeah. And that's where that confidence and calmness genuinely comes from. It doesn't come from like if you've memorized everything about charitable contributions. It comes from that deep understanding of yourself and the test and material itself. Yeah.
How how did you, well, we'll get to how that one at the end. Sorry. What about, did you have a misread penalty? I wanted to ask on that one because I did. And
Paul's a very rich man after me. I think that's why we get along so well. I started, yeah, with like I think I started and I told him like, all right, I'll give you $50 per misread. And he kind of like laughed. Yeah. And after that first day, I was like, oh wow, I probably need to go a little bit lower here. So we got it down from there. And I think it was the best thing that I ever did because people just don't understand how detrimental misreading questions is to this exam. It's like honestly the key advantage of this exam.
you can know absolutely everything. And if you read do not as do or do as do not or all except, or I mean, it is wild what our brains can do by misreading.
Oh, it's great. And I have like ADHD in
Me
general.
too.
Yeah, yeah. It's like for me, it's like if I read something, and again, this is where I think you just get better through this process, just in general. It's like
Yeah.
reading with the cursor. Like I think every time I read a book now, I'm just using my
I do too.
finger, and yeah, and you actually understand what's going on.
I painted my fingers a bright pink when I took the exam so that my eyes literally would not, like, they would just stay right on the word.
But it's so it's those small things that make the biggest difference. That's where the margins are made.
And what about, how would you say you've become a better, like in your field now as a result of, obviously you didn't just memorize stuff.
Mhm.
How would you say it's improved your ability in your current role?
No, I mean, again, we laugh about that, Paul and I did, because from the moment I failed the second exam, I'm probably, you could say the first exam, but the second exam, my life changed throughout the entire process in the best ways. I mean, I became the youngest director in my group in company's history. And I inherently saw myself in conversations and deals in different situations where like I could diagnose and understand what was going on, where looking around, you just kind of know that other people don't. And that, again, that's one of those things that I tell people when they ask me, I'm a little nervous about going back through this. I'm having PTSD with the fail and all that. I always tell them, and this was before I passed the exam, that I was talking to people, and I was like, you will become a better person from this before you pass this exam. And you'll look back and be like, failing was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now, can you imagine if somebody told you that right after you failed the first time?
I think if you told me that 7 days ago, I still wouldn't have quite believed it, you
You
know?
would have slapped somebody in the face. No, that is, I mean, Amy, I had talked to, I don't know if you know Amy Wood, but we had talked earlier and she had just passed and she's like, it is such a blessing that I failed. And I'm like, until you're at the other side, no human being will ever agree with that. But it is the journey to get, that's why we call this journey to CFP, because it's not just about getting the letters. It is a journey that you go through that makes you so much stronger in every area of your life. Every area.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of those things that there's obviously, and it's once you get through it, you really see it. There's that badge of honor. Anybody that has a CFP, a CFA, a CPA, everybody understands how much you sacrifice to get that. It is truly a really high honor, I think. But there's also that little extra club, I think, the club within the club where it's like the people who failed one, two times and stuck with it and got through it. That is a level of pressure and accomplishment that again, I think makes margins in your life. And I think I was surprised, a lot of people I know that failed this thing once or twice and even started to consider if they could be in this industry. Don't ever be that, because it's not about that. This is a different, you're smart enough, you're capable of doing this, and it's just one of those things where it can be the greatest thing that ever happened to you.
And what did you learn about yourself in this process?
Yeah, so in line with that, I remember I told Paul after I passed, and I didn't tell anybody this. And when I told my dad, he kind of broke down, which was a great moment for him. But like, I feel like I've had a really blessed life and I've done a lot of cool things. And I've also had tons of failure in my life, especially with golf and recruiting. And like, I think that each lesson taught me something about myself. But this one specifically, I remember after I failed the second time, Paul just wanted to kind of give me some time and then get right back into it. I think he kind of saw more in me than I saw in myself. It was evident. And it was like a month after I failed. We were starting to do sessions. I was kind of in and out. And I was about to call my dad and just talk through different plans that I wanted to go through and like, career outlook. And I was going to call him and tell him what happens if I can't pass this exam. Like, what do we do if I like can't do this? Because this is what I've always wanted to do, And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, are you telling yourself that you can't accomplish your dream and your goal? And it was that moment, like I committed and dedicated. And I said, that's why I'm doing this exam. It's not even about the future or the career. It's truly about like proving to myself that I've never genuinely thought I couldn't do something. So I'm going to prove myself that I can do it. And from a personal growth, confidence, understanding, and self-awareness standpoint, it's been the greatest thing I think I've ever done, other than proposing to Haley and getting engaged.
Good job. Make sure
Second best thing.
Ooh, I was gonna say, don't let her watch this.
Second best thing that's ever happened. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. Mic drop. Like I'm so happy and I'm so grateful that we got to talk to you like during the process and then also afterwards, because I cannot agree more with everything that you've said. Like it is life changing, and the calm and confidence being earned, I think, is unreal. And to be able to say, whether it's to yourself or, if you've got kids in there watching, like you did it when everything else in your head might have said, oh God, should I not? You pushed through and you got to the other side. And I am so incredibly proud of you. I'm so excited. I have goosebumps. You can't see them because I have long sleeves on, but my goodness gracious, Chris, congratulations. And thank you for being on this journey and sharing, not only once, but twice, how everything has been for you.
No, of course. And I mean, the one thing I'll say just so in line with that is, to the people, like to anyone who's like, I need to do this on my own. I did tutoring, this and that. Like no one's in there in that exam center but you. And Paul the team at Breakthrough is one of the biggest proponents of that. It comes from you and that's got to be for you. And No one's in there with you. So once you do it, you know you've earned it and you've put in the work. So
Well, thank you, Chris.
yeah, thank you, Jessica, for everything.
All right.